Nia's eyes widened as the flashing lights tore through the mansion gates, and she knew one wrong word could get her boss killed. Her breath caught in her throat as heavy boots pounded up the marble steps, each footfall a hammer strike against her racing heart. The grand hallway stretched before her like a tunnel of shadows and moonlight, the crystal chandelier above casting fractured rainbows across walls that had witnessed countless secrets. Behind her, in the study with its mahogany doors still warm from her touch, sat the man whose life balanced on the edge of her next sentence. The sirens screamed closer, and her hands trembled as she smoothed down her black uniform dress, forcing her face into a mask of calm she didn't feel. This was it. The moment where everything changed. The lead detective's shadow fell across the threshold first. Then his body followed, tall and severe in his dark uniform, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. His eyes scanned the opulent entrance, a hall with practiced suspicion, taking in the imported rugs, the paintings worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. His gaze landed on Nia, and she felt the full weight of law and authority bearing down on her. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. I want to see how far this story is reaching. Where is Dante Moretti? The detective demanded, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Behind him, 6 more officers fanned out, their weapons drawn but pointed at the floor. Nia's mind raced through possibilities like shuffling cards, each one a different future. She could tell the truth and watch them drag her employer away in handcuffs. She could stay silent and become an obstacle they'd remove, or she could speak the words already forming on her tongue, the lie that felt more like survival than deception. She stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried the soft lilt of her Georgia roots, steady and clear. Mr. Moretti left for his country estate 2 hours ago, officer. I'm here alone, finishing the evening cleaning. The detective's eyes narrowed, searching her face for deception, but Nia had learned long ago how to wear stillness like armor, how to meet authority with the quiet dignity her grandmother had taught her. She gestured toward the cleaning cart she'd strategically positioned near the staircase, its array of supplies lending credibility to her story. The detective stared at her for what felt like an eternity, his jaw working as he weighed her words against his instincts. Then his radio crackled with static. Detective Chen, we've got a credible sighting of Moretti at the waterfront. Multiple witnesses. Moving to intercept. Chen's expression shifted from suspicion to frustration. He looked at Nia one more time, and she held his gaze without flinching. If you're lying to me, you'll be charged as an accessory. You understand that? She nodded. I understand, officer. But I'm just the maid. I clean the floors and dust the paintings. That's all I know about. He turned away, gesturing sharply to his team, and they retreated like a tide, pulling back from shore. Nia stood in the doorway until the last vehicle disappeared beyond the iron gates, until the night returned to its previous quiet, until her legs threatened to give out beneath her. The study door opened with a soft click, and Dante Moretti emerged from the shadows, like a predator made of midnight and expensive cologne. He stood well over 6 feet, his frame filled out with the kind of muscle that came from discipline rather than vanity. His dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. His eyes caught her now, dark as espresso and just as sharp, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He wore a charcoal suit despite the late hour, and the shoulder holster she'd never noticed before gleamed dully in the chandelier. Light. That was impressive, he said, his voice low and textured with an accent that wrapped around the words like velvet over steel. You just lied to a police detective without breaking a sweat. Most people can't do that. Nia's heart still hammered, but she squared her shoulders. I told him what would keep you safe and me out of trouble. Seemed like the smart play. The corner of his mouth lifted. Smart indeed. Do you know what they wanted me for, Nia? She shook her head, though suspicion had been growing in her mind for weeks. I think I'm starting to understand you're not just in real estate, Mr. Moretti. Now. He did smile. A flash of white teeth that carried something dangerous. No, I'm not. He gestured toward his study. Come, I think it's time we had an honest conversation. It smelled of leather and cigars and old wood. He poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses, without asking, and handed her one. I am the head of the Moretti family, he said simply. We control most of the port operations, several legitimate businesses, and various enterprises that law enforcement finds objectionable. The police wanted me tonight because someone informed them I'd be here, alone, vulnerable. He sipped his drink. You could have let them take me. Why didn't you? Nia considered the question, turning it over in her mind like a stone polished by water. She thought about the past 3 months, about the way Dante treated his staff with respect, even when he was clearly capable of violence, about the fair wage he paid without question. She'd grown up poor in Atlanta, watched her mother work 3 jobs and still fall behind on rent, seen good people crushed by systems that claimed to be just. Because you've been honest with me, she said finally. Not about everything, clearly, but about what mattered. You pay on time. You don't make demands beyond the job. You treat me like a person, not furniture. She met his eyes directly. And because those cops didn't come here for justice, they came here for a trophy. Something shifted in Dante's expression, a softening around the eyes. What I do is dangerous, Nia. The people who work closely with me live with that danger every day. Now that you know the truth, you have 2 choices. You can leave tonight with 6 months severance and my guarantee that no harm will come to you, or you can stay, knowing full well what you're stepping into. The offer hung in the air between them. Nia knew she should take the money and run. But something in her chest pulled tight, a thread connecting her to this moment, to the possibility of becoming something more than she'd ever imagined. I'll stay, she said quietly. Dante's smile returned, genuine this time. Then, welcome to the family, Nia Thompson. And thank you for saving my life tonight. The weeks that followed opened Nia's eyes to a world operating beneath the surface. She still cleaned and organized. But now, she also observed, learning the hierarchy of the men who came and went. There was Marcus, the underboss, a mountain of a man with gentle eyes. There was Vincent, the consigliere, silver-haired and sharp as broken glass. She learned to read the tension in their shoulders when business went bad, to recognize the subtle hand signals they used when they suspected surveillance. She watched Dante command these men with respect and controlled violence, his word, law, within his domain. One night, she witnessed her first true glimpse of the darkness. 2 of Dante's men dragged a bloodied figure toward the side exit, the man's face a ruin of swelling and cuts. Dante followed behind, his own knuckles split and bleeding. Let him live, Dante said quietly. Let him carry the message back to Castellano that stealing from me has consequences. Their burden into the night. Dante turned and saw Nia standing in the shadows, watching. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Instead of running, she stepped forward and said, "You should put something on those knuckles before they swell." His tension eased, and he followed her to the kitchen, where she cleaned and bandaged his hands with the efficiency of someone who'd patched up her brothers after street fights. His skin was warm under her fingers, the bones and tendons strong, the scars old and numerous. "You're not afraid," he observed. "I'm terrified," she corrected. "But fear doesn't mean running. Sometimes it means standing still and being smart." He caught her wrist gently when she finished, his thumb tracing the delicate bones there. "You're not like anyone I've ever met, Nia Thompson." She felt the heat of his touch spread up her arm. "Good," she whispered. "I'd hate to be boring." The shift in their relationship was subtle at first, built on late-night conversations after the house fell quiet, shared meals when his meetings ran past dinner, small touches that lingered longer than necessary. Dante began asking her opinion on matters beyond housekeeping, valuing her outsider perspective. She offered insights he hadn't considered. Approaching problems from angles his lifetime in the Mafia had blinded him to. And slowly, inexorably, she fell for him for the contradiction he embodied. The man who could break bones and then recite poetry in Italian, who commanded absolute loyalty and gave it in return. He fell for her too. Though he fought it harder, knowing the danger it posed. But he couldn't resist the way she challenged him, the way she saw past the myth to the man underneath. 3 months after the night she'd saved him, she found him in his study, staring out at the grounds with tension in his shoulders. "What's wrong?" she asked. He didn't turn. "There's a rival family making moves. The Castellanos. Tomorrow night, they're coming here, to my home." His jaw tightened. "I want you gone before it happens." She crossed the room to him. "No." His eyebrows rose. "No? I'm not leaving. This is my home too now. Teach me to defend myself. Teach me to shoot." He stared at her for a long moment, warring emotions flickering across his face. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right, but you follow my instructions exactly." "Understood?" She smiled. "Understood." The next 18 hours were a crash course in violence. Dante took her to the basement range she hadn't known existed. He put a Glock 19 inches her hands and taught her the weight of it, the mechanics, the responsibility. She fired until her hands ached, until the motion became muscle memory, until she could group her shots in the center mass like he demanded. Then he taught her brutal efficiency strikes to vulnerable points, how to break a grip, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. As the sun set, Dante gathered his men and outlined the defense plan. The house would appear vulnerable, but would actually be a fortress. Nia would stay in the safe room hidden behind the wine cellar, armed and protected by Antonio. Dante pulled her aside before taking his position. "If something goes wrong, you take the tunnel to the garage and you drive. Don't look back." She covered his hands with hers. "Nothing's going wrong. You're going to destroy them. And then we're going to have a very long conversation about what happens next between us." His eyes darkened with emotion, and he kissed her, fierce and claiming. Then he melted into the shadows. Nia went to the safe room with Antonio, a space lined with monitors showing security camera feeds. She watched the screens, with the Glock heavy in her hands. It started at midnight. The cameras picked up dark figures flowing over the east wall. They moved with professional precision, spreading out across the grounds, advancing on the mansion in coordinated teams. Antonio's radio crackled with soft updates. Nia watched the screens, tracking the approach, seeing the trap close around them. They breached the doors simultaneously on 3 sides. And that's when Dante's people struck. The monitors showed chaos, muzzle flashes like camera strobes, bodies falling, men grappling in brutal combat. She watched Dante on the screen, moving through his home like death incarnate, his weapon an extension of his will. But the Castellanos had come in force, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numbers. 3 attackers headed toward the wing where the safe room was located. Antonio moved to the entrance, positioning himself to ambush anyone who found the hidden panel. The door to the wine cellar crashed open. One man paused near the wall that concealed their position, studying it. He pressed the wood, and the panel clicked. Antonio burst through as it swung open, firing 3 times in rapid succession, dropping the closest attacker. But return fire came instantly, and Antonio jerked backward, red blooming across his shoulder. The second attacker aimed for a kill shot. She didn't think. She raised the Glock the way Dante had taught her, focused on the front sight, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil jolted her arms, and the attacker stumbled, his shot going wide. The third man turned toward her, but gunfire from the cellar entrance dropped him. And then Dante was there, his eyes wild as he took in the scene. "Nia!" He reached her in 2 strides, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. Dante pulled her against his chest, and she felt his heart hammering. You saved Antonio. You did exactly what you needed to do. Behind him, Marcus appeared, helping Antonio to his feet. The sounds of fighting were fading, Dante's radio crackling with reports of enemy retreat. They'd held the mansion. Dante pulled back to look at her face, his thumb wiping away a tear. You were magnificent, he said quietly. Brave and strong, and everything I hoped you'd never have to be. She managed a shaky smile. Your teaching was good. He kissed her then, gentle despite the violence still echoing through the house. The weeks following the raid brought heightened security and forced normalcy. Nia continued her training, pushing herself to become genuinely skilled. They grew closer, their attraction deepening into something more profound, built on trust earned through shared danger. He told her things he'd never spoken aloud about his father's death that had thrust him into leadership too young, about the weight of responsibility. She told him about her childhood, about dreams deferred because of poverty, about the intelligence she'd been forced to suppress. They found in each other a strange compatibility, two people from different worlds who understood power and loyalty and the price of both. But peace was temporary. Vincent approached Dante with an offer too good to refuse. One of the Castellano lieutenants wanted to defect, bringing detailed intelligence. All he asked in return was protection and a position within the Moretti organization. Dante arranged a meeting at an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Nia had a bad feeling from the moment she heard the plan. Something in Vincent's manner seemed off. Don't go, she told Dante. Or at least change the location, the time. Something. This feels wrong. He looked up from his papers, patient but firm. I appreciate your concern, but this is my business, Nia. I know the risks. She moved to stand beside him. I know you do. But Vincent's been acting strange. Please, just consider it. He studied her face, reading the genuine fear. All right. I'll add extra security. Change the meeting time by 2 hours. And position additional men outside the warehouse. Will that ease your mind? She wanted to say no, but she recognized the compromise. Yes. Thank you for listening. He pulled her onto his lap. I always listen to you, tesoro mio. You've proven your instincts are sound. The next evening, Dante left for the meeting, and Nia was left alone with a skeleton crew of guards. When her phone rang at 11 o'clock, showing Dante's number, relief flooded through her. Hello? But it wasn't Dante's voice. It was Vincent's, tight with fear. I'm sorry, Nia. They have my daughter. They said they'd kill her if I didn't cooperate. They have Dante. They're going to kill him unless you bring yourself to them in trade. The world tilted sideways. What? They know you're important to him. They'll trade his life for yours. I'll send you the location. Please, Nia. If you don't come, they'll kill them both. The line went dead. Nia stood frozen, phone clutched in her shaking hand, mind racing through impossible choices. She could call Marcus, but that would take time, and the Castellanos would kill their hostages before rescue arrived. Or she could try something desperate that relied on every skill Dante had taught her. She looked at the weapons cabinet, selected the Glock, a backup pistol for her ankle, a knife. She dressed in dark clothes and checked the address Vincent had sent. She called Marcus as she headed for the garage. They have Dante. Vincent was compromised. I'm going to stall them while you organize a rescue. Track my phone? Marcus started to argue, but she hung up, knowing he'd mobilize everything but that it would take at least an hour. The warehouse loomed against the night sky like a monument to decay. She parked a block away and approached on foot. She circled to the side, found a window low enough to climb through, and slipped inside into darkness that smelled of oil and salt water. Voices echoed from the main floor. She crept toward them, using shadows and stacked crates for cover. What she saw made her blood run cold. Dante was on his knees in the center of the open space, hands bound behind his back, blood running from a cut above his eye. Around him stood at least a dozen Castellano soldiers, and in front of him stood Marco Castellano himself, a man in his 60s, with silver hair and eyes like chips of granite. "Your empire is built on illusion, Moretti," Castellano was saying. "Tonight, I'm going to tear down that illusion. I'm going to kill you and take your territory." Dante's voice was rough, but steady. "If you think my death ends the Moretti family, you're a fool. Marcus will succeed me, and he'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." Castellano smiled, cold and certain. "We'll see. But first, let's talk about your pet. This maid who thinks she can play in our world." He gestured to two of his men. "Bring her in." Nia realized they'd anticipated her arrival. She had perhaps seconds. She stepped out from cover, hands raised and empty, the Glock tucked in her waistband beneath her jacket. "I'm here," she called out. "Let him go, and you can have me." All heads turned. Dante's eyes went wide with horror. "No! Nia! Run!" Castellano laughed. "Come here, girl. Let's get a look at the woman who's tamed our wolf." She walked forward, measuring distances, counting enemies, noting positions of exits and cover. 12 soldiers, Marco himself, and Vincent, with his head down and misery written in every line of his body. Long odds, but not impossible if she was smart, and Marcus's people arrived in time. "The trade is simple," she said, looking directly at Castellano. "Me for him. Killing him makes you enemies forever. Letting him go, in exchange for leverage over him. That's smart business." Castellano studied her with interest, circling. "You're articulate for a maid. Clever words to misdirect the police. Is that your talent?" She met his eyes without flinching. "My talent is seeing what people underestimate and using it." He stopped pacing. "You're not afraid." "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but fear doesn't change what needs to be done." For a moment, just a heartbeat, she saw something like respect flicker across his face. Then, it hardened. "It doesn't matter. Tie her up next to him. I want him to watch when I put a bullet in her head." The soldiers moved toward her, and this was the moment. She dropped and spun, her hand flashing to the Glock, drawing and firing in one smooth motion. The closest soldier went down. Chaos erupted. Dante surged to his feet, despite his bound hands, throwing himself at the nearest guard. Nia dove behind a crate as bullets tore through the air. She fired around the edge of cover, precise shots, dropping another soldier, forcing others to seek protection. The warehouse became a war zone, gunfire echoing like thunder. Nia moved between cover points, staying low, taking shots only when she had clear targets. She saw Dante headbutt one guard, take his weapon with bound hands somehow, and start firing with devastating accuracy. He was magnificent and terrifying, and she understood why men followed him, why his enemies feared him. A soldier flanked her position, and she spun to meet him, but her gun clicked empty. He grinned, raising his weapon, and she threw herself forward instead of back, inside his guard, driving the knife from her belt up under his ribs the way Dante had shown her. His eyes went wide, and she twisted the blade and pushed him away. She grabbed his fallen weapon and kept moving, kept fighting. Across the warehouse, Castellano had retreated behind his remaining guards. Vincent had produced a gun and was firing at the Castellano soldiers, protecting the family he'd betrayed even if it cost him everything. Then, like an answer to prayers, the warehouse's main doors exploded inward, and Marcus led a flood of Moretti soldiers into the battle. The reinforcements hit the Castellanos like a hammer, overwhelming their positions. The gunfire intensified for 30 seconds of absolute chaos, then began to fade as the outcome became clear. Nia stayed behind cover, breathing hard, her ears ringing, her hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. Then Dante was beside her, his bound hands finally cut free by Marcus. Nia. He pulled her up and into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. What you did was insane. Brave and brilliant, and completely insane. She wrapped her arms around him. I wasn't leaving you. Not to them. Not ever. He pulled back to look at her face, his hands framing it. You saved my life. Again. You fought like a soldier. Like family. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Like my queen. Marcus approached. Boss, we have Castellano. He's wounded, but alive. Vincent too. What do you want done? Dante's eyes never left Nia's face. Bring them. Both. Castellano was dragged forward, blood spreading from a wound in his side. Vincent followed, uninjured, but looking 20 years older. Dante stood before them like a judge preparing to deliver sentence, and the warehouse fell silent. Marco Castellano, Dante said, his voice carrying to every corner. You attacked my home. You threatened my people. You kidnapped me and tried to kill the woman I love. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here. Castellano lifted his head with difficulty. I have no defense. We're at war. I lost. Do what you must. Dante studied him for a long moment. No, he said finally. I'm not going to kill you, Marco. I'm going to give you a choice instead. You can die here tonight. Your family leaderless. Your empire carved up by rivals. Swear fealty to the Moretti family. Merge your operations with mine under my leadership, and live to see your grandchildren grow up. Shock rippled through the sieve, watching soldiers. Castellano's eyes widened. Why would you offer this? Dante glanced at Nia. Because tonight taught me something. Strength isn't just about crushing your enemies. It's about knowing when mercy serves better than violence. You're a capable man, Marco. A worthy adversary. You'd be a valuable ally. He extended his hand. Swear loyalty, and this war ends tonight. The silence stretched. Slowly, painfully, Castellano lowered himself to one knee and took Dante's hand. I swear loyalty to the Moretti family, to Don Dante Moretti. Dante pulled him to his feet, and just like that, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. Then, Dante turned to Vincent. The older man flinched, prepared for execution. Vincent, Dante said quietly, you've served my family for 30 years. Tonight, you betrayed that trust. Vincent's voice cracked. They had Elena, my daughter. They said they'd torture her if I didn't cooperate. I had no choice. Nia stepped forward, her hand finding Dante's. Is your daughter safe now? She asked Vincent gently. He nodded, tears streaming. Marcus sent men. She's safe. Nia looked up at Dante. He betrayed you to save his child. That's not greed or true disloyalty. That's love making an impossible choice. Dante's jaw worked, emotions flickering too fast to name. Finally, he spoke. You'll retire, Vincent. Tonight, you'll take your daughter somewhere far from this city. You'll never return, never contact anyone from the families. In exchange, you'll live, and your daughter will be provided for with a pension from my accounts. Accept it or refuse it. But decide now. Vincent dropped to his knees. I accept. Thank you, Dante. Dante gestured sharply, and 2 soldiers escorted Vincent out, his exile beginning immediately. The Don turned back to his assembled people, to the combined forces of what had been 2 rival families. Tonight marks a new era. The Castellano family is now part of the Moretti organization. Anyone who has a problem with this can leave now with their lives. He paused, scanning faces. No one moved. Good. Marcus, coordinate with Castellano's lieutenants. Start the integration immediately. The warehouse emptied rapidly, and soon only Dante and Nia remained, standing together amid the evidence of battle. Dante sank down onto a crate, suddenly looking exhausted. She moved to stand between his knees, her hands on his shoulders. "You were incredible tonight," he said, looking up at her with eyes that held wonder and desire, and something deeper. "You fought like you were born to this life. You saved me, saved Vincent's daughter through your compassion, and changed my mind about Castellano with your wisdom. You're not just surviving in my world anymore. Nia, you're shaping it." She stroked his face gently. "We shape it together. That's what partnership means." He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against her stomach. "Marry me." The words were muffled but unmistakable, and her heart stopped, restarted, thundered in her chest. "What?" He looked up, and she saw vulnerability there alongside the strength. "Marry me. Nia Thompson. Be my wife. My partner. My queen in truth. Help me build something better than what came before." She should have been afraid of what saying yes would mean, of the target it would paint permanently on her back. But fear had never stopped her before. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Dante Moretti. I'll marry you." He surged to his feet and kissed her, deep and claiming and full of promise. In that abandoned warehouse, surrounded by the debris of battle, they sealed their fate with a kiss that felt like coming home. The wedding was planned for early December, a lavish affair that would announce to all the families that Nia Thompson was no longer simply Dante's companion, but his acknowledged equal. His chosen queen. The mansion buzzed with preparations for an event that would host 300 guests, many of them dangerous men who'd be watching for any sign of weakness. The ceremony was held in the mansion's grand ballroom. Traditional voices had objected, citing her lack of family connections, her humble origins. Dante had silenced them all, with characteristic finality. As Nia walked down the aisle on Marcus's arm, she saw the faces watching her curiosity and envy and respect, and the occasional flicker of disdain. She met every gaze with calm dignity, her head high, her stride confident. And then she saw Dante at the altar, and the rest of the room faded to irrelevance. He wore a black suit tailored to perfection, his powerful frame radiating authority. But his eyes were soft now, vulnerable, full of emotion he usually kept locked away. He looked at her like she was everything. She reached the altar and took his offered hands. The priest began the ceremony, speaking words about love and honor and partnership that took on deeper meaning in this context. When it came time for Dante to speak his vows, his voice carried clearly through the silent room. "Nia, I was born into this life, raised to command and control, taught that emotion was weakness. Then, you walked into my world and changed everything. You saved my life with your cleverness and courage. You challenged me to be better, smarter, more merciful than I was raised to be. You stand beside me as an equal, a partner, the only person I trust with both my empire and my heart. I vow to protect you, to cherish you, to build with you the kind of legacy we can both be proud of. All that I am, and all that I have, is yours." Nia kept her voice steady for her own vows. "Dante, when I met you, I was lost, working a job just to survive, dreaming small because I'd learned to expect little from life. You saw something in me I hadn't seen in myself. You gave me opportunity and challenge and trust. You taught me to be strong, to be brave, to claim the space I deserved. You loved me not despite my humble beginnings, but because of the person I became when given the chance to grow. I vow to stand beside you always, in triumph and crisis, to be your partner in building something worthy of the loyalty people place in us. I vow to be honest, even when truth is hard, to be brave, even when fear threatens, to love you completely with all the passion and strength I possess. You are my Don, my love, my home. Where you go, I go. now and forever. The priest pronounced them husband and wife, and when Dante kissed her, the room erupted in applause, the combined families celebrating not just a wedding, but a coronation of sorts. The official elevation of Nia Thompson to Nia Moretti, Queen of the Empire. The reception that followed was lavish and surprisingly joyful, the tensions between formerly rival families eased by excellent food and abundant wine and the obvious genuine affection between the bride and groom. As midnight approached, Dante took her hand and led her away from the festivities, through quiet hallways to the master suite that was now truly theirs together. Finally, he breathed, pulling her close. I've been waiting all day to have you to myself. She reached up to loosen his tie. We did it. We actually did it. Built something new. Brought families together. Survived every threat thrown at us. He caught her hands and brought them to his lips. We did more than survive, amore mio. We thrived. We created something the families will talk about for generations. The maid who became queen. The Don who chose love over tradition. The empire built on loyalty and strategy instead of just fear. She smiled against his mouth as he kissed her. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. I love you more than power, more than legacy, more than life itself. You made me believe I could be more than what I was born to be. You made me better. They made love slowly, reverently, celebrating their union and survival, and the future spreading before them like an open road. And later, as they lay tangled together in silk sheets, the sounds of the continuing celebration, distant and dreamlike, Nia felt peace settle over her. One evening, weeks after the wedding, as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the grounds, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Dante pulled her close. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Staying that first night? Choosing this life? Everything you've had to do and become? She was quiet for a moment, honestly considering the question, thinking about the woman she'd been walking into this mansion for the first time, nervous and uncertain, and desperate for a paycheck. She thought about everything that had happened since. The violence witnessed and participated in, the fear faced and overcome, the transformation from invisible maid to visible queen. No, she said finally, turning to look into his eyes. Not for a second. This life is dangerous and complicated, and sometimes terrifying. But it's also real and meaningful. And mine. I'm not drifting anymore. Not invisible. Not small. I'm building something that matters with a man I love beyond reason. How could I regret that? His smile was brilliant and rare, and he kissed her deeply, gratefully. I was broken before you, he admitted. Functional, but hollow. Doing what I was raised to do without questioning if there was more. You showed me there could be more. Partnership, instead of isolation. Mercy alongside strength. Love, mixed with power. You saved me in ways that have nothing to do with that first night with the police. She rested her head on his shoulder, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. We saved each other. We saved, she corrected softly. That's how the best partnerships work. Below them, the mansion glowed with light and life. Security teams patrolling with quiet efficiency, the machinery of their empire running smoothly because they'd built it on loyalty and strategy and genuine care for the people within it. Somewhere in the city, families allied with the Morettis conducted business under their protection. Soldiers carried out orders with confidence in their leadership, and rivals calculated and recalculated their strategies, knowing that challenging the Moretti organization meant facing both Dante's legendary ruthlessness and Nia's unexpected brilliance. Nia Thompson Moretti had traveled an impossible distance from the frightened maid, standing in a moonlit hallway, gambling everything on words that would save a stranger. She'd become a queen in truth, not through birthright, but through courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination to claim the life she deserved. And, beside her stood Dante, the Don who'd learned that true strength meant knowing when to fight and when to show mercy, when to command and when to listen, when to stand alone and when to share power with an equal partner. Together, they'd forged something new in the old world of the Mafia. A partnership built on love and respect and mutual recognition of each other's worth. Their story would be told in whispered conversations throughout the underworld. The legend of the Maid and the Don who defied tradition and expectations to build an empire unlike any before it. Young soldiers would hear about Nia's bravery in that warehouse confrontation, about her strategic brilliance, about her transformation from outsider to queen. Young women in the families would see in her story the possibility of being more than decorative accessories to powerful men, of claiming their own authority and making their own legends. And through it all, at the center of the legend and the empire and the carefully constructed power structure, was the simple truth of two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something beautiful despite, or perhaps because, of the danger that surrounded them. As night fell completely and the first stars blazed overhead, Dante and Nia remained on the balcony, comfortable in the silence that came from complete understanding. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to prove their strength and cunning. Rivals would scheme, authorities would investigate, the constant churn of the underworld would continue its relentless motion. But tonight, in this moment, they had peace and each other, and the satisfaction of having survived and thrived when so many had predicted their failure. Nia's journey from invisible maid to visible queen was complete, but the story was far from over. It was only beginning, each day writing new chapters in the legend of the country, Moretti Empire. Each challenge overcome, adding another layer to the myth of the woman who'd spoken one sentence and saved a mafia boss, then stayed to become his equal, his partner, his love. The mansion lights glowed warm against the darkness, a beacon of power and promise, home to the king and queen who'd built their throne on loyalty, strategy, and a love strong enough to face any threat the world could throw at them. And in Nia's heart, wrapped in Dante's arms under the stars, was the certainty that she'd made the right choice, that moonlit night months ago, that every terrifying moment and difficult decision had led her exactly where she needed to be. She was home. She was powerful. She was loved. She was queen. And this was only the beginning of everything they'd build together, the empire expanding under their combined leadership, the legend growing with each passing year, the love deepening through shared trials and triumphs. The story, that had started with one brave sentence in a moment of crisis, had become an epic of transformation and partnership, of courage rewarded and love triumphant, of two people from impossibly different worlds who'd found their way to each other and refused to let anything tear them apart. The end was really just another beginning. The next chapter, waiting to be written. The future spread before them, like an open road, leading toward horizons only they could imagine. Together, they would face whatever came next, not as maid and master, not as servant and Don, but as equals, as partners, as husband and wife. The queen who'd risen from nothing, and the king who'd learned to rule with his heart as well as his mind, building an empire that would stand for generations, all because one woman had been brave enough to lie to save a stranger, and wise enough to stay when she learned the truth. One brave sentence changed everything for Nia, for Dante, for the empire. Could you have made the same choice? Comment below with what you would have done, like if you felt Nia's courage, and subscribe to join us for more incredible stories like this.